Okay. Warm, warm welcome to all of you that are here live. Thank you for carving out the time and space in your schedule on a Tuesday morning or evening. It's kind of a peculiar time, so I really appreciate you showing up. And if you're watching this recording later, I really appreciate your attention in joining with this sometime in the future. It's been months since I've been sitting in this place in front of this computer teaching or doing anything work related. So it feels actually really good. I feel refreshed and really, like some of you said, really thrilled and joyful and happy to be here to come together around poetry and meditation, which are just my two favorite activities since I was young. So I know some of you well, but I will give just a brief introduction and then we're going to meditate together for a few minutes and then I'll read some poems. So I always want to share just enough, but not too much about who I am, just a little bit of context. My name is Brooke McNamara and I've been writing poetry since I can remember, since I was able to write. My first poem, I always find it kind of endearing, was about my beloved pet cockatiel bird. And I just was so captured by the question of whether he felt safe because I had him in a cage or whether he felt trapped. The only real way I could explore this in a way that felt satisfying, I found, was through a poem, and that was early. So the rest is kind of history. I studied poetry through high school and college, got a degree in it, put it down for a while, got really kind of frustrated and done with it. And then when I had children in my 30s was when I feel like a river cracked open literally in my body through giving birth and in my heart through just this, I kind of want to swear, this fucking tidal wave of love and tenderness that I had these two little human creatures that came from the love between my husband and me and that were now mine to protect. It's just such a huge, overwhelming, reorganizing experience and put me in touch with my power in a way I'd never experienced before. And I really lost the appetite to write, to try to impress, or to write for any other reason than to say what was most honest and real for me. So that becoming a mother, totally surprisingly, was actually my biggest initiation into being a poet, in the sense that I kind of found my seat in my own voice. And parallel to that is that I've always just loved to sit still and listen really deeply, I think. Even as a little girl, I liked to sit in the garden for hours and just, my brother running around like a little wild boy, and I would just sit for hours, just quiet and still. And so I found my way to meditation and Zen practice for over the past 15 years. And that practice of getting still and quiet and listening deeply with every cell of every level of my being is also just a really magical and trustable, consistent way that I find access to what I experience to be a pre-existing poetic dimension of this life. So maybe that's enough for now. I'll say that I'm holding this call from Boulder, Colorado, which is the unceded territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho people. And I think with that, in naming the land that I'm on, I would love to just pause on my talking and invite us all to a couple of minutes of quiet meditation. So I will offer a little bit of guidance in the Zen tradition, and you can take it or leave it. So you can, become still and access presence in whatever way works for you. But if you like, you can go ahead and find an upright position that is comfortable, stable, and where you feel both alert and awake and also relaxed. So if you're sitting upright in a chair or on a cushion, you can pull the flesh out from under your sitting bones. So you're perched on your sitting bones and your pelvis rocks slightly forward. And from there, you can feel that your spine can lengthen really naturally. Not trying for a straight spine at all. We've got these beautiful curves that create buoyancy in our spine, but you can find a little length. And simultaneously to that upward lengthening of the spine, you can make sure that your legs and the whole base of your body are in as symmetrical a position as possible and as comfortable. So cross-legged or sitting on a chair with feet on the ground. And then see if you can allow just like 10% more gravity in, or allow yourself to yield to gravity about 10% more, especially through the weight of your pelvic bones, your sitting bones, your legs, your feet. Just let gravity in. So if there's any holding or clenching in the belly or pelvic floor or glutes or hips or legs or feet, just see if you can exhale and yield to gravity a bit more. Connect down to the earth. And as you do so, you might feel or imagine the earth rising to meet your feet, legs, and seat. So a relatedness between the base of your body and the earth herself. Sometimes the spontaneous exhale might come. You might want to open your mouth actually and release some sound. And if you're lying down, just translate all these instructions to the whole body. Let's do one more of those big inhale together, and then open your mouth, soften through the jaw, and let some sound out, whether it's a soft sigh or maybe it's a yell, I don't know, just letting some sound out. And then if you're sitting upright, you can let your spine sway side to side a little bit. This could be subtle and imperceptible, or it could be more dramatic, like I'm doing, if you can see me. Just like a little piece of seaweed in the ocean, and just find some fluidity and softness in the spine. You can also do this forward and back. Let all that subtle undulating movement get smaller and smaller in your own time until it becomes so subtle that you're in a radiant stillness or a dynamic stillness. Your spine is awake and upright, but it's not stiff. It's got this kind of vibratory quality. And then you can soften your gaze or close your eyes all the way. Just connect with your breath. You can breathe however you want to. And as you do, just soften in the place behind your eyes. And soften in your jaw and your tongue and your throat. Soften in your shoulders and your solar plexus and your belly. And as you just breathe here together, with all these folks from around the world, just breathing together, you can notice any sensations, emotions, and thoughts. And you don't have to indulge them and you don't have to push them away. You can simply notice what's here in my body and my experience in my mind right now. And even as you notice them, you can, as they say in the Zen tradition, you can take the backward step, which is just to identify as awareness, as the awareness that is noticing it all. And sometimes it's nice to invite yourself to rest as awareness. And then it's possible to rest as awareness and also feel into the space of your heart, your subtle heart, and just sense what brought you here today, or wherever you feel that in your body. Just sense what brought you. It might be a thought, it might be an image, it might be just a feeling in your body. And just bring that alive right now. What brought you? Then you can vivify or breathe into that longing or curiosity or whatever it is that brought you. And then you can take a nice deep full breath into that. And from that place, you can begin to open your eyes again if you want to. And you can turn your screen back on if you want to. Or you are so welcome to stay in an internal space, more internal space, with your eyes closed or screen off. And we will shift into some more poetry. So thank you for taking that moment. I always just like to transition from pedestrian mode into a different kind of attention. So I really appreciate you taking the time to pause with me. And I wanted to start by saying that I've been sensing and really enjoying exploring the connection between the posture of meditation or the posture of zazen that I just sort of narrated, and how that is, for the first time, I'm realizing that that posture is so similar to the form of a poem or the container of a poem. And I kind of can't believe I've never realized this before. I've never heard anyone talk about this before, because it's really lighting me up to notice that when we, whether it's an upright spine or whatever way that we organize our body and our mind and our breath, so that we are available with our full attention to sit with what is real, that's the same thing as a poem. That's the same thing as coming to a blank piece of paper. And as a poet that I love named Danusha Lamaris, who some of you were in class with her last spring, she talked about how A poem is a container that can hold anything. It can hold contradictions. It can, and this is the same as our meditation posture. Our meditation posture can hold anything that arises. It can hold rage, grief, not knowing, knowing. It can hold boredom, numbness, and a poem can do the same. And so I think that's part of why I love the combination and the interrelationship between poetry and meditation, is because they are both spaces where we are both allowed to feel it all and get coherent with what is so, but we're also, what's the word? We're training that capacity, but we're also, it sort of makes a demand on us. I think if we choose to cultivate a consistent meditation practice or poetry practice, we can't avoid what is so, or the fullness of truth. And that's really confronting, but really beautiful, because in my experience, it just makes my life more real and our life more vivid. So I just wanted to share that, noticing that these are two ways I've found to get real and to find connection and to find real community too. So thank you for being here in both of these ways. And I feel vulnerable because the last time I did this was in 2020 in March. I had just released my second book called Bury the Seed. And then the pandemic hit. And so I did a reading online. And I haven't read any of my new poems except a couple here and there in class with some of you. But I realized it was time to share some vivid and complex experiences from the past 2 years, which are highly personal and also completely impersonal or universal in a certain way. Or that's my hope, I should say. My hope is that as I share what the past 2 years has brought through me onto the page, I hope that we can connect a bit about experiences of loss and discovery and bring them forward and then kind of release them in ways that are healing. So that's my intention for today, but this is all new poetry. So I can feel that I'm a bit like, oh my gosh, it's raw. So with that said, I'll just begin, and I'm gonna go through these in a bit of a chronological order. They're not exactly chronological, but the first poem that I'll dive into is from like April 2020, when the pandemic had just hit and my family had moved to rural Utah to escape the plague. And no one knew what was really happening. But I remember I took my sons, I have 2 young boys, and I took them out for a walk in the desert. And it was sunny, and then the wind came, and then clouds came, and then it snowed. And I was like, well, God, that's what this past couple of months has felt like, with the shifts socially and culturally and just life-wise, with making sense of this, this disease. So this poem is called Weathered. And I'm going to read each one just once, but I'll go slow. Weathered. In just 1 hour out here, we've had sun, wind, clouds, and snow. My mind is reeling, but my soul alert in love. When this is over, I want to know that this will never be over, that it's always already done. When this is over, I want to say I got to be weathered by a storm from the numinous, terribly beautiful, awful, and awesome. I want to say I weathered it only by giving myself into a real we. Yeah, so it's strange to read that 2.5 years later, and it is over, and it's never going to be over. Um, so the thing about some of these poems is that they're totally obsolete now. That things have completely changed, and in a certain way, this next poem, I thought if I publish these in another book, which I plan to eventually, I thought this one has no place anymore. It's like the context is gone, but there's something kind of endearing and funny about it. It's called Wiping Down the Groceries. Did you all do that funny practice for a while? Yeah, we were very religious about wiping down our groceries when we thought COVID could spread through touch. And maybe that was wise at that moment. But anyway, now I read this and I'm like, wow, we did so much work and I don't know if we needed to. But anyway, this one is called Wiping Down the Groceries. Thank you, Melissa's 4-count sweet yellow corn on the cob. Hello, luscious, organic half and half. I love you. Bundle of fantastically orange oranges, salt and vinegar, bold almonds, wholesome harvest 9-grain and seed loaf bursting with flax and sunflower seeds. I praise by swiping, my white towel moistened in the too bright scent of Mrs. Meyer's geranium all-surface cleaning spray. Not out loud, no, not in words, but through communication closer in, brisk, firm, wiping massages, because who these days doesn't want to hear thank you in the tangible language of touch? Flesh of these red bell peppers will fuel my boys, flesh of my flesh. Yolk of these eggs will strengthen my man, soul of my soul. And magic in these beans will brighten my morning writing, spark of my fire. I clean these holy objects without fear and only adoration. This tri-weekly rite after shopping the local chuck wagon is a temporary temple. These antiviral gestures, a small, strange dance of celebration for having these mouths to feed and this food to do so. Thank you. Yeah, so part of the meditation posture and the container of the poem, part of what I really love, and I think I have a bias for in terms of the kind of poetry I like, is that, yes, it can include everything. So I like poems that are like ridiculous, funny, absurd, heartbreaking, transcendent, mundane. That's my preference, is to read poems that are inclusive of the whole human experience and more. And so that's the way I like to write too. So some of these are funny and some of them are a bit more serious. This next one was just one of those days of being in stay-at-home orders with kids and just not knowing what was going on, and a lot of fear. My husband having some health concerns and just really not wanting him to get COVID. And we're just reading the news about all the loss. So this is a grief poem. It's called Open Ocean. I know less than ever. Today, I know less than any other day so far. I do know there is a hurricane brewing in my belly. I do know it is no longer possible to keep this heart together, that trying to hold it together as a solid thing is starting to poison. Although it has broken countless times before from the inside and the outside, today there is an imminent explosion of a new order. Breathing in, contraction pulls it all to a center. Exhaling, every cell wails, and an open ocean of uncivilized, utterly forgiving waters floods from an unknowable source. My heart is nothing but everything now, lost as sea. Whose tears have I drowned in? Whose tears are these oceanic, amniotic fluid I've become? Thank you. So after 6 months in Utah, we decided it was time to come home to Boulder and sort of stay in our house in Boulder for another 6 months or so. And I think a combination of what we were all experiencing collectively, and then also getting closer to midlife for me, something happened where I felt this like in and downward pull that I'd never experienced before. And a lot of sensations of dying on subtle levels, old parts of me dying. And so this next poem, which I think is also the title of my next book, is a description of what happened in meditation one morning around that time. And it's called Where Root Tips Touch Sky. In mid-December, I wandered outside to sit down on the cold ground. Once I'd settled, the earth began to breathe beneath me, letting me ride the subtle undulations, lifting me a little toward her sky on every swelling in-breath. Then, without warning, she exhaled hard and swiftly swallowed me underground, hugged into a sack. I dreamed there for eons of the sweet and muscular insistence of spring, chrysalis containing caterpillar becoming ooze with imaginal discs, planning outrageous future beauty. Tulip, hyacinth, and iris embryos aching to unfold their ultimate faces. But none of that is what happened to me next. As everything back home began to answer the light, I got squeezed further down and out, falling into flight through an underside or an other side, a place where dirt clods softly crumble like earthen snowfall into space, where root tips touch this endlessly kind, endless sky. How's my pacing so far? Am I going slow enough that you can track? Okay. If it would ever be helpful for me to read one twice, you can put that in the chat and I'm happy to, but I'm just erring on the side of reading more poems just once. So that poem, that was December. And then in January, this next poem, there's a man that guest taught for my poetry class last spring. Some of you met, named Shan Ray. I didn't know him, but he reached out and asked me for a poem that he is creating an anthology of poems with kind of a collective of editors with diverse backgrounds, and they're looking for lots of different kinds of poets to all write their own poem with the same title called We Are All God's Poems, knowing that, you know, so many different cultures have different ideas of what God is or isn't. But, you know, if you had to write a poem called We Are All God's Poems, what would you say? So he invited me to write a poem for that. And I sat down to write. I thought I was going to write about like the natural world and humanity in this big grand poem. And then this is what came out. I was very surprised. It ended up being a love poem to my husband soon after New Year's. So this is called We Are All God's Poems. This poem has gained 8 pounds and grown a silver weave through a year of uncut hair. On New Year's Eve, 2021, we stayed up till 3 a.m., the boys asleep upstairs, and like teenagers laughed and chatted in some delirious, nonsensical paradise, catching up after months of daily household tedium. When he asked, "What's your favorite thing about our marriage?" my own answer surprised me. The gray hair and bellies were both growing. It's the most tender privilege to age alongside you. Dear God, it is not lost on me how lucky I am. Dear God, let there be more lines. Let there be more lines. And when you've finished this collection, please place me on the page opposite his. Close the covers so we can rest into each other forever, our words merging into a mixed up gibberish, happy to be nonsense. I had a dream last night that he died, my husband. So I still have that feeling of loss. So the poem hits me even harder. So that's one of my favorite things too about poetry, is that you sit down to write something and then it's just so great when we get to be surprised. I had no idea that was going to come out. Okay, let's keep moving. This one is a different mood. Like so many of us, maybe this isn't true for you, but I ended up spending so much time on Zoom like this, teaching meditation and poetry and just staying in touch with people that I love. And one of the poets that was a guest teacher in Summoning the Unseen, named Rosemary Watola Tromer, invited us in her class. Her prompt was we read a poem about not being able to escape. I think it was a submarine. It's this great poem. And then she invited us to write a poem about not being able to escape something. And I don't know why I chose a Zoom breakout room. Have you all been in Zoom breakouts where you're in a small group? And so I was imagining if I got sent alone into a Zoom breakout room and I couldn't get out, which is an absurd thing. Obviously, you can just walk away, but I just wanted to explore this like terrifying prison of a Zoom breakout room. So it's called Things to Do Alone in a Zoom Breakout Room. Put favorite lyrics in the chat. Raise and lower that emoji hand until brain waves shift to theta. Look into the eye of the camera. Look into your own eyes on screen, looking slightly downward. Whisper, why won't you look me in the eye? Listen tenderly to however you respond. Send a message to the host that you need a little support. Receive the lack. Mute and sing those lyrics loudly. Unmute and play that game from middle school bus rides where you repeat penis a little louder each time. When done, lean in and memorize the shades of blush on cheeks, neck, and chest. Get lost in teeth, gums, and tongue. Check if any tonsils exist today. All at once, demand, give me back my lost lungs. And then give me back my lost gas station sunglasses and copy of Van Gogh's Letters. And finally, into every little pixel, give me back my lost breakout group. Close your eyes. Stand up and feeling the walls for direction. Find your own way out through all the doors. Okay. I think I'll read a couple more and then I want to give you some time to do some writing and just see what's alive for you. I'm jumping around in moods a lot. This next one is more meditative. It's called To Be Read at the Threshold. To be read at the threshold. Your whole body is an eye. Find the place that sees. The burning question since before the beginning is lifting now from the soft expanse at the end of this exhale to ring your heart and tongue. 100 cells, 100 suns in every cell are rising, spilling their rays into ingestible medicine. Drink the opening light into every nerve, vein, and ache. What arrives is not an answer, but your self-image undressed at last, gazing inward with a neon silence, searing you into a living lamp to sit with what suffers. I have a couple of longer ones and I don't want to bombard you with long ones. I'm curious if anyone has a vote for heavier or lighter in flavor. I'll choose between two. Anyone have a preference for a lighter one or a heavier one? Oh, thank you, Roan. She says, I'd love to be bombarded by all your poems. I feel the same way about you. Okay, heavier? Is heavier okay? Okay, great. This one is a mouthful, but it was very real. So this was exactly a year ago. And this is called Just What the Doctor Ordered. Just what the doctor ordered. My calendar tells me in the next 3 weeks, I'll be seeing a pulmonologist ophthalmologist, dermatologist, and my 40th birthday. In the past week, our family has seen our temperatures range from 103.8 to 94.7. No medical advice, please. We've had plenty already. Thank you. I mean, I'm fine, really. It's just that as much as my feet can still feel the floor, I'm seeing everything from 3 feet behind my skull, and it's throwing me off a little. Last Wednesday, Dr. Zolpan said from his little video square, when I told him about the heavy feeling in my chest since July, "Sweetheart, I know you're scared, but really it's just a lingering cold and cough caught from your little guys from going back to school for the first time in a year and a half. Plus, it's been a hard allergy season here in the Front Range, right? Plus, the fire smoke this summer has been heavy in so many ways, hasn't it? What you need, dear soul, is to slow down. Of course you deserve it. I can see you've been working your ass off to hold a world together for them. A little medicine I'll prescribe, some herbs. And please try to let that grief gripping your chest and fear pushing your eyeballs out the back of your head all move and transmute and heal you." Just kidding. I wish. What he really said was, "I'm going to need a negative COVID test before we can book you in here for some x-rays." Dr. Zolpan, I'm sorry to say, has an objectively punchable face. God bless him. And I mean that. But I think so often of what we really need. What do I want for my 40th? My eyes to arrive back home again. Oh, great wilderness, please bring liquid lightning down my spine, loop it around my ovaries, pool it at my sacrum to nimbly trickle down the center back of each leg like stocking seams. Bring vision back to the soles of my feet. Last night, Rob asked, after the boys had gone to bed, what he could do for me. A little massage? 30 minutes in of his kneading my back flesh, neck, and hips, I still could not feel a damn thing. Frozen, numb. But then he rolled me over, bringing his tender artistry of simple, true touch to each foot, belly, and solar plexus. And then, even though autumn is coming and the temperatures outside are falling, here inside my body, a river of ice began to crack and heave, and I let the spasms and eruptions of unsung sorrow and worry burst and surge till the whole quaking spell of wild weeping had its way with me. Loved open by the man who deeply knows me, floating in my own body's bright intelligence released, I can finally feel again. Something, anything, everything, this. Okay. That was a long one. Thanks for sticking with it. How are you all doing? Okay. I have a bunch more, but I'm gonna skip through them, and I think I'll read one or two more, and then you can do some of your own reflections. Let's see. Okay, this one is kind of fun. This is kind of recent. I think this was just a couple of months ago now. Some of you have heard this. This one's called Grapefruit Sunset. Grapefruit Sunset. Last Saturday night, by chance, I found myself alone in a bar in North Boulder for the first time in who knows how long, floating softer with every sip of slightly sweet upslope ale I was getting to enjoy, swaying to the live bluegrass music and watching the dogs figure out if they could get along. I'm not going to tell you what this isn't. It's a long story. But listen, this is what it is: a proposal accepted, an inward marriage newly claimed and too sweet to be spoken. I never knew it could be like this till now, being all the brides as well as all the grooms, and none of that, but so much more, standing at the altar in the center of my gut, saying and reclaiming an eternal, unconditional yes. It was so easy to be friendly, I found, in the company of my own soul healed like this, chatting with the bartender about how good the citrus ale is, admiring the guy who looked like a hipster Viking, and wondering if I should commemorate this blessed occasion with the purchase of a trendy upslope foam dome hat. When the musicians took a smoke break out under the hazy grapefruit Colorado sunset, the song lyrics coming through the speakers spontaneously became vows in this marriage to my own secret self through all time. Into the deep we go, baby, till I drown. Into the deep we go, baby, till I'm found. I can't tell you how to live your life. It's just not what I know. You're the keys to all my churches. Open up the door. That actually is a really good song called Into the Deep by Macy Gray, if you want to look it up. All right. I think that's time. I want to end on time. We've got a lot more, but save them for another occasion. Okay. So thank you so much for listening so wholeheartedly for that whole time. And I just want to give you a chance to maybe if anything you received is moving through you or like touching something and causing something to want to express through you, I want to give some space for that. So if you have paper and pen, or if you want to type, or you might just want to close your eyes and kind of percolate and contemplate and rest in the residue of all that speaking. So it's a very simple prompt that I want to offer you. Just what is alive for you right now? And you can explore through writing or just resting. What is alive for you right now? Just for about 4 or 5 minutes. Let's just take about 1 minute more. All right, let's pause. If we were in class together, I'd see if any of you want to share what you've written. I'm really curious. Feel free to email me if you want to share what you've written. Um, and if you want to dive into more of this, I put a link in the chat to my upcoming 8-week course. Some of you are already signed up. We will be looking at poems together, meditating together, writing together, and then sharing. We always have time at the end here for you to share your own work and get feedback or just be heard. And time also in smaller groups to connect about our writing process and more. So I'd love to have any of you, and you can check out more at that link. I want to close this for now, and then you can, I can stay on for up to 15 minutes more and answer questions about the course, or have an in-person retreat in October. And if you have questions about that, I'm happy to stay. But I wanted to close it for those of you who need to go. And I'm just so grateful to have anyone listen to what I have to say. So thank you. That was pretty scary, but felt really good too, because you all have such kindness in your faces. So thank you for being here, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Feel free to hop off. I'm going to stop the recording, and then we can